amazing. And then it was basically, he was like, okay, you are the only person I'm offering this to. Will you do sort of like an audition for me? Will you write what you imagine the first like 3 or 4 chapters of the book? And I was like, what? Oh, right, I have to write this. So I went home, because I was at a friend's house at the time. This was in early 2021. I went home and I immediately, if this goes, there we go. This is my collection of all 15 books. I went home, reread all 15 books in about 7 days. I read about 2 books a day. That's all I did for a solid week. All these little post-it notes I put in here are notes about Nico, about Will, about Bob, about things that I knew were going to play a part in this book, and I just really wanted to have a good grasp of the world again. So this was actually my 3rd read through this entire series to prepare for this book. I wrote this very intense outline for it. And then here's the cool part. If you actually open your book, the first 5 chapters of this book are essentially what was my audition. This is the original first draft, so you can even look. This is the opening chapter. If you look, you can see it's slightly different. Like there's a few words that are changed, but Rick ended up liking it so much that now when anyone reads this book, they're essentially reading my audition at the beginning. We barely changed anything. Like the first sentence is a little different, some of the other things, but so I sent this in, and then I would say it took about a month and a half or 2 months before I finally heard back. I remember getting the call that was like, the text did not, so it says it very, very small. So it says, it was 6 weeks after writing the audition, I got the call from my agent. I would be the first person to ever co-author a Percy Jackson book in the entire world. I absolutely started crying and was just like, I was just so happy. But then I was also kind of scared because it's like, no one's ever done this. I couldn't go to another author and ask for advice. How do you do this? Because no one had ever done anything like that. So, it's Will. Because a lot of people were like, this better be the gayest book ever. And I was like, girl, I got this. But anyway, I was still very, very nervous writing it. So what sort of challenges did I face when writing about Solangelo, this great couple in the series? It was very intimidating. I'd say it took me about 30 or 40,000 words, so about a solid 1/3 of the book for me to stop being scared and just start doing what I wanted. The book got announced in the middle of me writing the first draft. So all of a sudden, I gained 20,000 followers on Instagram like that. Or not 20, 10,000, maybe in a week. So all of these people are like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Is this gonna be in the book? Are you gonna do this? Are you gonna? And I was like, oh no. And so I just blocked all of social media just so I could write the book. It was also hard writing someone else's world. At that point, I'd written 6 books, but they're all mine. They were all my ideas and my characters. And now I'm suddenly writing characters that lots of other people love and have their own ideas about it. I really enjoyed it. The other big thing was, what do we put in this book? There are so many monsters that are in the Percy Jackson series. Do we bring back old ones? Do we add new ones? And the fun thing was that Rick was like, Mark, I want you to feel like you can add your own original stuff. You don't have to do what I do. You can add new things. So there are, if you haven't read the book, there are some familiar faces. The troglodytes come back, the Dracons, the Stymphalian Bird. We haven't seen Dr. Thorne since the 3rd or 4th book?
No, I think he's in the first one of Heroes of Olympus. I think he was in I think
is he in Nico's dream? Or Percy's dream?
I think no.
It had been a while though, right?
It has been a while, yes.
So, because I know he shows up when Nico's around,
yes.
Shows up for Percy early on. But I was like, what's Dr. Thorne up to? And so I was like, Rick, can I bring back Dr. Thorne? And he was like, yes, absolutely. That being said, he also was like, do you want to add new monsters and new things from Greek mythology? So I was very happy. So I got to introduce Menoetes, who is a character in Greek mythology who is basically in charge of guarding Persephone's gardens. And I took that idea and made it something else. You're going to have to read the book. I don't want to spoil who he is because he is a very interesting character. Journey. Amphithemis, this one over here.
I think I can say they all finished the book.
You all have finished the book?
Yes.
Oh, so okay. Oh, that's exciting, because yes, I've done 2 or 3 of these this week, and people were halfway through, so
I
was
think
like,
they were told they had to finish before.
okay,
Yes.
you all know
Finish.
Menoetes. He's great, I love him.
Yes.
He's very chaotic. Amphithemis. This was a character who I had learned about in Greek mythology a long time, and I really wanted to have almost someone kind of dark and tragic in Tartarus, and found him and through researching was like, oh, he'll be perfect. But my favorite of all time, and the greatest thing I think I've ever written, was the Eternae. And so when I was a kid, I was lucky enough that when we learned about Greek mythology, we learned about Alexander the Great's journals. When he was on his great conquest, he was in northern India, and he came across these creatures that he called Eternae. He said they were huge beasts, like woolly, like this weird matted fur, and they had bones jutting out of their heads. I was 9 years old when I learned about them, and was immediately like, they're my best friends, I love them, I want to be friends with them, they're so great. So I remember going to the librarian and being like, can you give me any books about the Eternae? And she's like, I don't know what that is. So we looked it up, and there aren't any. And in fact, I have been waiting my entire life for the Eternae to show up in anything, because I think they're some of the coolest creatures in Greek mythology. And so I was like, hey, I don't know where, Rick, but I would love to put the Eternae in this book. And he's like, that sounds like a great monster for Tartarus. But while I was writing the first draft, the scene where the Eternae show up was so scary, it actually wasn't fun anymore. And I was like, I don't think people are actually going to like this. What am I missing here? And so I'd asked one of my friends who's a big Percy Jackson fan, what do you recommend that I do? And they were like, well, just do what Rick does, which is when things get really scary, one of the funniest things he does, and what I love, is he'll tell a joke that sort of deflates the tension a little bit so you're not too scared, but like the stakes are still up there. And that is how I came up with the idea that the Eternae are himbos. And so that scene in the book, which feels like a fever dream, like I've had kids be like, are you okay? When they read that scene, I'm like, I'm fine. So that's Bartholomew and Carl, I believe. So it was really cool to get to add new creatures to canon. Did anything surprise me along the way? I mean, look, I got to write a book with Rick and watch him essentially write a book too. I get to see how he plots chapters out, how he thinks about action and all that kind of stuff. So I got sort of like a front row seat. What is that? Oh, it's okay. I haven't lived in New York in like 3 years. I forgot that that's a thing. Yeah. So getting to watch Rick create a book was really cool. There was a point when we were in like draft 3 and 4 where it was very clear we were just writing jokes to make the other person laugh. And so we'd leave notes to each other in the margins of each draft of like, do you think this is funny? Like, it was really cool. So that was really surprising and fun. What did I learn through this collaboration? First of all, Rick is 1,000 times funnier in person. He has this really dry sense of humor where he'll tell a joke and everyone's laughing and he's not reacting, and it makes it 1,000 times funnier. We actually have very similar writing styles where we write outlines and then we write from an outline. So the whole process was weirdly easy. I've never written a book with someone before, and I thought it was going to be hard. And it was incredibly easy. Like, we worked together really well. Let's see. I need to update this, because as of yesterday, Rick and I have been on the New York Times bestseller list for 41 weeks. This book has been, I've never had a book be a bestseller in my life. We are rapidly approaching it being on the list for a year. We don't know who is buying this book still. It has been out for 10 months now, and it's still, it's wild. The success of this book, neither one of us can predict how well it's doing. I think if the photo actually loads. Oh no, it's the one after this. So these are some of my other original books that I've gotten to write. This first one, the second one, and the third one are young adult books, though they're generally for readers ages 13 to 18 years old. This is a contemporary book, this is fantasy, this is my horror novel, this is about a magical room, this is about time travel. So I've gotten to write many different styles of books in many different genres. Oh my God, it's actually missing from here. I had an image of when Rick and I were on tour. It was supposed to actually be before that one. I wonder if it's just skipped it. To show you what it was like. Oh, it is actually missing. That's so weird. Oh, there it is. So remember when you were like, oh, there's not that many people in this room? And I was like, no, I prefer this. This is what it was like every single day for 2 weeks. Now, here's the thing. This venue is so big, the photo couldn't hold the third row up here. There's a third row. There are 2,800 people. I don't get stage fright. I am not nervous talking to you. Absolutely mortified. Every single night I walked out on stage, I was like, there are too many of you looking at me. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. Also, I've never done anything presenting to this many people, and I didn't realize, I always assumed being in the audience that people on the stage couldn't hear you. No, we could hear everything everyone was saying all the time, so it was really distracting. But it was a lot of fun. That's what it was like. So yeah, my life is very surreal. I think for me personally, it is just as cool that not only that I get to do this, but that I get to do this. I again tend to prefer this because I can actually talk to you and see your face. It's very hard to see people when there's that many of them. But yeah, I learned that there are a lot of Percy Jackson fans. There are way more than I thought. Like way more. It's really cool. So anyway, that is enough about me and my books. I am just gonna leave it on the last page. Where did you go? There we go. Okay. Some of you have questions you prepared. If you have new ones that you thought of, I'm welcome to answer them. And then there are a few of you who came afterwards. I will sign books before I leave, because the rest of them got their books signed already. Okay, John, do you want to go first?
What are some scenes or chapters that you scrapped or
Sorry, I've been talking for like 20 minutes. Here's the wild part. I can't actually remember. It's really weird. Sometimes people ask, they'll like open the book and point to like a sentence or scene and they're like, which one of you wrote this? And I don't. We went back and forth so many times that I don't actually remember most of who wrote what line. I do know certain scenes, like the attorney is me. Most of the flashback, the really dark section with the dark pages, that is mostly me. That is something I came up with like while I was writing the first draft and was like, oh, this isn't in the outline, I hope it's okay, and Rick really liked it. There was a longer scene in Persephone's garden with Will, and the only reason we cut it short was because it just kind of was dragging at some point, and I was like, we need to, like, Will's also slowly dying this whole book, and it's like, you can't tell that he is, like, because he's just like merrily chatting to Persephone, and Rick and his editor were like, Mark, this needs to be fast, like it needs to be moving a little bit more, so there's some we cut from it, but I don't think we cut an entire scene. We cut some just really ridiculous jokes where it was clear Rick and I were just being silly, and it's like, why is this here? But I can't say there's almost anything cut that's like significant. It was all just like one or two lines, or maybe a joke or a reference to something, but like most of the scenes are exactly kind of what we wanted from the beginning. Yes?
What inspired you to add the dark pages?
Oh, what inspired? Okay, this is a little bit of insight into how books are written and how authors actually do what they do. So, the initial outline never had the dark pages. We never had Nico's backstory of what happened the first time we went to Tartarus. And as what had been planned was, as they're going on this journey, Will wouldn't understand things about the underworld, so he would ask Nico, and Nico would be like, well, in my time in Tartarus, I learned this, I experienced this. And I got about 75-80% through the book, and Nico and Will had a conversation that was a flashback to his time there, like 20 times. And I was like, this is really annoying. And in fact, I think a reader is going to be super... there was a whole little aside that we had written in explaining more about him, and then Rick was like, maybe we should take this out but how he did is kind of funny. So hopefully, I don't know, either he will or I'll get to explain what that is someday. Yes, right here. Lucas.
What inspired you to make the book?
Ooh. I don't think anyone's actually ever asked me that question because I know what inspired Rick. I know Rick was thinking about how many, queer fans that he's had over the years, particularly ones who really, really, really like Nico, and was like, I think it would be great if he gets his own book, and it feels just as important, as exciting as the books with Percy and the books with Apollo, and any of the other characters. I think what inspired me was when I read the first outline, that thing that I showed you that I got right after my meeting with Rick. I read that outline and I was like, oh, this is a book about a queer kid getting to realize he's in love and he gets to heal. And I was like, oh, I'm in. Like, it actually had a moment, I remember reading that outline, I was like, do you need me, Rick? Because this is pretty good as it is. Like, there wasn't that much that we deviated from the outline. But from my main inspiration was thinking how much I wished, as an in-the-closet kid, that I had a book like this, that there's multiple queer characters and they're just doing their thing, And that you get to show that being in a relationship is actually work. It's not easy. Like you have to learn how to talk to people. You are both operating with different assumptions about the other person. So yeah, that was my inspiration was, and then also thinking like, I'll never get the opportunity to do this again. I'm gonna make this the most wild, ridiculous, the gayest book ever. Like I just was like, so much of my, once I got over the fear while writing it was just do whatever you want. Because who cares? Again, the worst thing that can happen, they say no and they cut a scene or two, but you're still getting this opportunity of a lifetime to write a Percy Jackson book, put everything you want in it. And I did, and I would say 95% of it is still, like there's jokes in there that I genuinely cannot believe. Like, okay, you know the scene early on when Will is like, we are not shadow traveling to New York City, we are taking public transportation. Nico is super annoyed. And there's that really bizarre scene where Will's like, oh, let me tell you this important story from my childhood, and it's just about someone pooping on the MTA. Like, that was a scene that I was like, it's such a Will thing, that in this really, really intense moment, he tells this incredibly silly story that Nico's like, okay, sure, that's the story you wanted to share. But it's also such a New York thing, we all know about like if you go into a train and it's all empty, go to another one. And so I loved putting little moments like that and just being like, this feels like such a Will thing and a New Yorker thing, and who cares? I'm just gonna try. And so a lot of my inspiration was just like, you're never gonna get the chance to do this again. Just throw everything at the wall, like have fun with it. So, all right, yes, and then we'll go back to there.
Why did you add the Darth Vader scene in the beginning?
Oh. And that was in my audition. Okay, so it's technically, that is one of the only things in the book that's actually based on a conversation I've had, where I was sitting with a bunch of my friends, we were like, who's the hottest character in Star Wars? And my friend was like, Darth Vader. And we were all like, what? What? And he's like, oh, I don't know, when he takes the mask off, it's just so hot. And we were like, what? And so I loved that, just the chaotic energy of that. And I was like, I'm gonna start this book off with chaos. Like, let's trick everyone to think this is like this really high stakes moment, and then it's just a silly conversation. And I don't know, I actually liked starting the book off without any danger, and it's just them being in camp and sort of hanging out. Which is also mean, because it's like, here's the last nice thing that's going to happen for about 300 pages, So yeah, it was something based on a conversation I had with one of my most chaotic friends. He has a really weird taste in everything. I don't get it. I don't personally am like, that man looks like a raisin. Like, that's disgusting. Anyway. But yes, yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
Do you think when you and Rick make another book, or just Rick makes another book, the Cocoa Puffs will return?
Oh, okay. I mean, so I want you to know, so the Cocoa Puffs were his idea. Everyone thinks they're my idea. They weren't. They were in the original outline from the very beginning. Always called the Cocoa Puffs too. That was not me either. And they're actually, the book is deliberately written so that you have to have the Cocoa Puffs if we ever get to do it again. I mean, I wrote another book, my own book last year. I am currently writing my next YA right now. He's working on the new Percy series and the TV show at the same time, so we literally do not have time to write a book right now. But yes, 100%. Yeah, and if the Cocoa Puffs come back, I already have ideas of how I want to use them. Like new things, because they operate, because they're personal demons, if you touch them, any touch involves memory. So I immediately was like, I remember having a conversation with Rick last summer when we were touring on the book. I was like, what happens when another person touches them? He was like, oh. And then we had this little brainstorm thing of like, I bet this, So we have a whole Cocoa Puff plan. Cocoa Puff plan in 2000, I don't know whenever, if we ever get to do this again. I hope we do, because I had the time of my life writing this, but yes, they are written in a way that they have to come back and feature very prominent. I'm obsessed with them, to be honest. Like, I think it's one of the coolest, like, what a cool idea that the negative things that you went through turned into these cute little, like, puffy Sprite blobs that just hang around you all day, like, but yeah, so yes.
Have you made one on the
board? I know! I saw it, I already took a photo of it, I'm very excited. I love them, I'm obsessed with them. Yes?
Why was chapter 28 only one page?
I don't remember what chapter 28 is. That's probably a me thing. I love throwing people off with short chapters. I think it's really interesting. Yeah, also like, come on, we all need some short chapters. every once in a while.
It's page 200.
Oh, okay, actually, okay, so this chapter, if you go back, is actually the very first, you know throughout the book there's all the Gorgyra chapters with the canoe? We had to make it its own chapter because it's the first time it appears actually when it happens in the story. So now, this scene that we got at the beginning is actually happening in real time, so it gets its own chapter. And that actually was not me and Rick, that was the copy editor. There's a person who's hired or who works at Disney who just goes and corrects all the tiny little things. Like if you spell something wrong, you got this character wrong. You all have the reprinted versions of this book, but in the initial draft we called Nico's mom Bianca once accidentally, and none of us caught it, and so the copy editor later caught it when they read it after it came out. But this one, they were like, wait, this can't be a canoe chapter because now it's happening in real time, so it has to be its own chapter. We were like, good catch! Excellent chapter. So that's why, it's just a repeat, literally word for word of this, but now it's happening in real time. So this thing that was happening out of order, you're now like, oh, this is where it happens in the correct order. I'm so glad you asked that because I forgot we did that. I forgot that happened. Thank you. We'll go John, and then we'll come back to you.
So do you know why Rick made the Cocoa Puffs?
I do. And yeah, I do. And so the general idea behind the Cocoa Puffs was so many awful things have happened to Nico that Nico deserves something wonderful and really cool and unique that only happens to Nico. And so that was when I, like reading that outline, I was like, oh, I have to write this book because it's such an amazing thing of saying, hey, I know some queer people have a really hard time in life, but what if you, because of your queerness and this really difficult thing, like his childhood was so hard and messed up, like time traveling and growing up like in the closet in Italy in like in the 1930s, like in one of the worst times you could possibly be who he was. And then all of the tragedy he's experienced throughout the series, and then those things that hurt Nico now end up being these beautiful creatures who get to be with him for the rest of his life. And so his idea from the very beginning was, if I'm gonna write a Nico book, Nico deserves to heal from some of what I have put him through. And so that was where the idea for them came from. The Kakwa demons are a real thing in Greek mythology. Like there are actual. We know some of them. Miss Leary's dog, or the dog, is Miss O'Leary, right?
Miss O'Leary, yeah, she's a hellhound.
Those are hellhounds are Kakwa demons because they're created from nothing. Who else is?
Hypnos technically.
Hypnos is as well. So we've seen some that are other creatures, types of things, but we've never seen personal ones like that. And specifically because of who created them, most of Nyx's creations are Kakwa demons. So we're like, well, why can't, yeah. To answer your question too, if we get to write the Cocoa Puffs again, we're gonna name them.
Ooh.
And we haven't figured that out if we're gonna do that. I mean, that's gonna, if we get approved for another book, we'll figure out, but.
Fluffy.
Yeah, I mean, they need names. Like, we can't just call them the one with the horns, and there's the one-eyed one, and like, I know who they each are because they each are based on a specific emotion and a specific memory, but we think they need like actual names. And boy, those names are gonna be so funny.
Jeffrey.
What if they're all just like Stan, Mary, like just very basic? That's actually
Like Jeffrey
really
Ball.
What if it's like all, like they have like a rhyming name, like Jeffy.
Like Jerry, Mary, Gary.
Oh my god, or if they're,
Hey,
it's kind of like
Faye,
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
And then in like Pac-Man.
Okay, I mean, that's not a bad idea, actually. I think you were next to back and then right here. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. If you ever get to make like another book about this, would other people have like personalized cacodemons?
Like Will, maybe?
Oh, I would say I'm never gonna say no, not ever, because I don't know, we haven't planned anything, like there's not, like when we wrote this, like the contract was for one book, the outline was for one book, we never planned beyond it, except for being like, well, if we ever do this again, the Cocoa Puffs have to come back. But I would say it would have to involve a situation with Nyx again, because she's the one who created them. So I would also probably not want to do that because I don't want to repeat, like I don't want, if we get to do this again, I don't want the book to feel the same, it needs to be different. So I would say no, but I also think that's because I like how it feels special to Nico. Like I kind of like that it's his thing. Is that the end of the?
No,
Okay.
no, we're here for multiple.
Oh yeah, we
periods.
got, that's right, I got
Yeah,
another,
one more.
or 20 minutes. Did you have another question?
Oh.
Okay. Right here, and then we'll go into the back. Yes.
So this isn't really a question.
That's fine.
I just wanted to say that I feel like personalizing this, but my aunt and cousin they both are part of the LGBTQ community, and they're the absolute nicest people I've ever met. So, like, there's my aunt,
Yeah.
she has a girlfriend, she's my other aunt, and then there's my cousin, and she's also very nice. So I'm sorry that I just wanted to say that.
I love that though. Thank you for sharing. That makes me very happy to hear that too. Yes, back to the center.
What gave you the idea to do the map?
Oh my God. Okay, I now have to show you all the worst thing ever. So I can't draw. I cannot draw. It is not my forte. I can write. I play music. I love writing music. I've been playing guitar and bass since I was 16 years old. So let me tell you how badly I can't draw. When my first book came out, Ingress a Gift, there used to be this huge book festival at the Javits Center in New York called BookCon, and they haven't had it in like 4 or 5 years. And it was the biggest book festival in the country. Like that entire convention center would be whatever. So when the first year my book came out, I actually got to be an author who was like a guest there. So I had my first like big, like I had bookstore signings, like that one photo that I had in here with Nina LaCour. But this was like an actual convention hall, and I was very nervous because it was my first book. I was like, no one knows who I am. But there was like 100 people in line. Like I was very excited, very, very happy. And this kid, so my book has been out about 2 weeks. This kid comes up and was like, my dad bought your book for me yesterday. I stayed up all night to read it. And Anger is a Gift is longer than this book. And I was like, how old are you? And he's like 13. And I was like, what? Oh my God. And I just like, that's so flattering. Like, thank you. I can't believe that. That makes no sense. Oh God. So he was like, hey, and I just found that thing that I need to show all of you. So he was like, well, whenever I get a book signed by an author, I ask them if they can just do a little doodle in it. And I immediately just went cold and was like, oh, no, I don't draw. Like, you don't want me to draw. He's like, no, it doesn't have to be good. I'm like, it will not be good. And he's like, it's okay, just draw whatever. I don't have, you know what, can I use the back of your little thing? We're gonna attempt, so I was like, what do you want me to draw?
Here you go. You could use
You have paper?
I don't think it'll really show up.
Yeah, I just was like, use the same color, so this is not gonna work. So he was like, I don't know, just draw like a cat. And I was like, a cat? Okay. And so I was like, let me start like this. And then I went like this, and I was like already off, like just a okay, it has ears, and I don't know why I drew them super sharp. So then I was like, okay, let me just do the eyes. And then I'll do like, the cats have like that. And then I was like, and I drew like the most janky whiskers ever. And then I just wrote meow like this. So I'll do this so you can see.
Work of art, work of art.
Work of art, meow. This is my cat.
I love that.
Meow. Thank you, because this is what this child did. I drew this, hand the book back to him. No, he looks at the book, looks up at me and goes, you should stick to writing. I was like, how dare you? Who wants this? You can have this.
I want it.
Y'all want it.
No. This person. Okay. Anyway. So that being said, then the book is about 6 months from publication. They are finishing up all the designs and all the inside, and Rick's editor reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, we have this really great idea. We want to put a map of the journey of Nico and Will on what are they called? It's called the flaps. I can't remember what this. There's a very technical term. I'm trying to think fancy book talk. What are they called? End papers. These are called the end papers of the book. And usually they're blank. There's nothing on them. But they're like, we want to do something very special. and have the full map of everywhere they go. And his editor is like, do you want to draw it, Mark? And I was like, no, I can't draw it. And he's like, no, not the thing that will go in there. Like, we're gonna hire an artist, but can you just do like a draft version of it? And I was like, okay, it's gonna be really bad. And she was like, it's fine. And so this is, and you can sort of see where it came from. I'll go around to everyone to show. This is the actual thing that I drew. So we've got like, suffering, that's Will, more suffering. Like it is, I don't know what I was drawing. It is just a nightmare. So that, but the idea of the little arrows came from this, where I drew arrows of where they went, and they were like, well, what if we turn it like it's like a map, like a treasure map? So this is the actual version that I drew. Lots of stick people.
Beautiful.
I'll come by and show.
They-
I don't know, I think it's not that bad. Like,
It's not bad.
that's Will, right there. More suffering, because he suffers a lot. There's a lot of suffering.
They should
So,
have also like put the chapter names, like this is like 1 through 5, or this is like 5 through 10.
the idea was, I was like, well, what, they were just like, what are just the main locations that they go through? And then we'll make sure to put it on both sides so that if a person opens the book, they won't get spoiled for what happens in the second half because they're all on the back half. But yeah, that's where that came from. Yes.
I have one more claim and
Okay.
questions. First, I think you're becoming my favorite author. Second.
Thank you.
Second, like, why didn't you give the chapters names? Like, you just put them as chapters.
Yeah. Okay. So we knew that would be very different because usually Percy Jackson book chapters have names, and also the canoe chapters is a new thing. There's never been a Percy Jackson book that happens out of order. And that was a thing that we both were like, it doesn't, we thought about having it happen in order, and then they get to Gogaira, and she asks for multiple stories, and we were like, the book is just gonna come to a complete standstill, and they're gonna be in one location for like 10 chapters. We can't do this, so what if we just hint and have the little stories drop throughout so that it doesn't feel like, it might be a little confusing at first, but, hopefully it'll make sense. So we actually decided to go away from chapter names because the book was a little more like serious and sentimental and emotional. And the chapter names are usually really funny, and it didn't work because the book was not, it is funny in some parts, but a lot of it is like really emotional and intense, and the chapter name thing just didn't work. I don't even think we tested them. So there's not even like rejected chapter titles. We never even got to them. Like they were numbered at first, and then we had a conversation, should we have chapter titles? And we both were like, well, it doesn't make sense for this book. It'll feel weird. Like it'll feel like someone else. So it's just another thing to make this even more of a special book for Nico. Yeah. Right, in the back, and then we'll go bam, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. So what inspired you to give them those names, like Will and Nico?
The names Will and Nico?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't create them, so I actually don't know the answer.
Oh,
You didn't read the rest of the series.
I-
You didn't read the rest of the series. Just
And now that you say that, I don't actually know the answer. I need to email Rick and be like, Rick, someone asked me this today. I don't know how to answer the question. I'm actually going to do that later. I'm going to email him and be like, hey, someone asked me this. I don't know the answer to it. I don't know why he chose Will and Nico. I know Solace is a reference to the sun, like because
Solar?
yeah.
Oh, yes, like solar panels.
I don't know why he chose the name Nico d'Angelo or why Will in particular. So I'm glad you asked that because now I'm going to ask that in case someone does in the future. Okay. We'll say that. That's much better than my answer. All right.
Jackson whole series.
Other person whose name I don't know.
Okay. Thomas.
Thomas. Okay.
To go off what Joseph said with Will's own cacodemon, so I thought this. 2 cacodemons have a baby cacodemon.
What?
Nico gives it to Will.
That would be adorable.
That is adorable. But you know what? One of my favorite things that isn't, I didn't write, everyone thought it was me as well, was when one of the cacodemons gets really comfy with Will. That scene, I was like, because then that means that, like, Nico feels safe with Will or whatever like that. Ooh, I don't know. I don't know about cacodemons having babies with other cacodemons though.
That would be cute.
And then like Will could be like operating because he's like one of the. He could be like the doctor because he's like the.
Yeah, because he's a medic. He's a cat
He's a medic. He could go like. You could be like helping the mommy
This
cook
is way too detailed, and I love it. Oh, that's so smart. I love that you did that. Oh, now you all get your little meow cat. All right, yes.
I'm gonna draw my own.
I think the phrases.
Yeah.
What inspired you to become an author?
Oh, what? Okay.
Wow.
That's
The genuine, honest answer initially was it was the only thing I was good at as a kid. I did really well in school, but I didn't like the other subjects. The only subject I just was unhinged for was English. Like, I literally, well, I think you might have, were you here when I showed the book I wrote when I was a kid?
Yes.
You weren't in here, right?
No,
So some of them saw, but like I literally, as a hobby, would write my own books and get them laminated by my librarian. Like I wrote old Goosebumps books. They were all original stories kind of thing. So like the thing that I was good at as a kid was writing. So that's my initial inspiration is I just don't know what else I wanted to do. It's the only thing I wanted to do. But then as I got older, especially once I got into high school, it very much became this thing of, you know, I'm Latino, I'm queer. There were no books for me, like no books with people like me in them at all growing up. There were pieces of it, like I remember reading The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros, which is one of my favorite books of all time, and loving that, but still being like, there's something missing for me, like there's no stories about people like me. So it very much became that thing of, I'm going to write books that I wanted, which is very selfish, but also, I don't know, I find it a great motivating thing when I get stuck in a book, is like, no, I'm going to keep doing this because this is what I want. So I'm very, like all those books that I showed at the end that are other ones, I'm very proud that all my characters are characters of color, they're all queer, and I get to publish books about people like me and people in my community, and they're all for young people. So that's what my inspiration has become. But originally, no, I didn't like anything else. Like, I just loved books and reading. Yes, middle, back to Thomas, back up here.
What inspired you to write your first ever book?
Ooh. So before I was a novelist, I was actually a journalist, a music journalist. So I love that I'm here at this school in particular. I spent about 11 years in journalism, and both as a music writer and then as a pop culture writer. But as I was getting late in my 20s, my original goal from when I was a kid was to have a book with my name on the cover, and it hadn't happened. And so I'd written short stories. I had written a book when I was in college that never went anywhere, never got published or picked up or anything. And so I was very much having that feeling of, if you don't try this now, it's never going to happen. So my initial inspiration when I had an idea was, you have to do this or it's just not going to happen. And my first book took me 3.5 years to write, 5.5 years from the day I started writing it until it got published. It was a very long process. There were many points where I was like, this isn't going to happen. I don't think anyone wants to read this. And then even then it was, I want to write, Acres of Gift is about this high school in Oakland, but it's based on schools I used to visit in Oakland when I lived there, and also the high school that I went to that was very different from what I had seen high schools depicted on TV and movies. But yeah, I mean now I'm doing what which is not to say I dislike I loved being a journalist. I loved writing about the real world, but this is what I always wanted to do. And now I can't imagine doing anything. I have 6 books still coming, which is and I have probably 30 ideas I haven't gotten to. So I hope to write forever. Thomas?
What inspired you and Rick to do the scene with Will and Persephone in the garden?
Oh, so that is mostly, even though I wrote most of the scene, it was only actually, this is really cool, it was mostly because of Becky Reardon, Rick's wife. So a really cool thing about getting to write the book was she also edits the book and contributes a lot of stuff. And so the original version of the scene in the garden was super short, maybe a few pages. And Rick and Becky were like, something's missing here. I think this should be longer. And before it, if I remember correctly, Will and Nico were involved in it. And it was their idea to be like, I think this should be only Will. And I think it needs to be longer. Because it's kind of and so their idea was, he's basically meeting Nico's mom. She's not his mom, but Persephone and Hades are together. Stepmom kind of thing. It's here's this chance for Will to meet someone who is important to Nico, and Nico is actually not involved. So that's where it came from. I think I wrote most of the words, but the idea is, and I'd like to be honest about that, it is not easy to write a book. Look how long these are. Look how many words are in that, and you have to keep track of all the words and remember what you, it is extremely hard to write a book. So I don't like to lie and be like, it's easy. It's not, it's very hard. That being said, a big thing, so I used to have the same problem where I would start writing something and I just wouldn't finish it. And part of the reason why is I thought the way you had to write a story was you have a blank piece of paper or a blank document or a blank Word, like empty Microsoft Word or Google Docs. You sit down, you write a story, you come up with it as you go. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that someone was like, you can like figure out everything that happens beforehand. And I was like, why would you do that? And they're like, so you don't get frustrated and stuck later. And no one had told me this. And so I showed that outline on purpose. Rick is the same way. Rick does not sit down and write a whole book in order. Just like I do, write very detailed outlines of everything that happens. So when they're sitting down to write every day, they already know what's going to happen in the book. They're just figuring out how to write about that, which is way easier than if you're sitting there and you're like, where does this character go? What are they thinking about? So I like to say you don't have to try that, but if you're interested in writing, plan out the story, figure out what the ending is. So for example, I don't write until I know the ending of a book. I have to know where it ends. And even weirder, I write the last sentence first. So that when I'm writing the book, I always know what I'm leading towards. So the same goes for this. I wrote the last sentence first. Every single one of my books. And even more interesting, the final line has never changed from the first draft to the last one. Because for me, that's the core of the book. What is it? So you can peek at the last sentence. I have an idea of what it is.
But this was the time for the first time in Nico's entire life, that a certain sensation filled his whole body, stitched itself to his bones, buried itself in his heart. Nico smiled, the future held hope, and he clung on to it.
Yeah. It was the future held hope, and he clung on to it. Because for me, it was, emotionally, I was like, I want Nico to be happy for the first time in his life. You know how Hades in an earlier book had said, I want you to be one of my children who actually has happiness in his life?
Mm-hmm.
I knew that. I remembered that line before I started writing this, and I was like, I want the end of this book to be a reference to that. And that he is finally the first of Hades' children to actually find happiness in his life. But I then knew, that's not an easy thing. It's gotta go through a journey to get there. So we'll do this, and then I want to make sure to sign your 2 books, and we can still do questions and stuff. But yes.
What message do you wanted you to get after
I don't know. So I'm going, because I think generally, and I think Rick's the same way too, is there might be themes and stuff in a book that are deliberate, but we're both very much like when you write a book and you put it out in the world, it's your book, and what you think the message is way more important than what we think it is. I was certainly interested in the book, interested in writing it because I felt one of the main messages was, like, kids like me deserve happiness, and they deserve to be happy. I think that is a theme. I think a message is that any kind of relationship, not just romantic, but like friendships or whatever, learning how to be a friend and be there for someone who's different than you is incredibly hard. And there's so few books about that specific thing that kind of became like a guiding force for us. And so writing Nico and Will specifically was, how do you support someone whose life you maybe don't understand, or they have gone through something that you can't even imagine, like you don't have any experience with? How do you support them and be a good person, but then also you get to have your feelings, and it's complicated. Also, monsters are cool. Like, I love writing monsters. Rick loves writing monsters, and we were like, let's just, we wanted to make sure there were still lots of very strange monsters. And some were good, some were bad, some were weird, some were strange. There's himbos who are trying to outdie each other. Like, we just, so there are some messages, but I also hope people just had fun reading it and never quite figured out. Like, we just wanted it to be surprising. Like, it's been really cool how many people the whole time thought they knew what was going on and never saw the Cocoa Puffs coming. Like, that was my favorite thing reading the original outline. Is like I was reading it and I was like, okay, I know what these, because he'd written in the outline, there's these things following Nico, and he keeps thinking he's seeing something, and I was like, ooh, it's someone stalking him, or maybe it's Hades the whole time. And then when I got to the Cocoa Puff thing, I was like, what? I never saw this coming, and so that was like, even that was like a cool thing too, of just like, I hope people have fun reading it, and there's a little bit of a mystery, but yes. Let me sign books if you want to yell questions out. Maybe not yell, maybe not say yell. Oh, perfect, I'll come back and do this. Yes, go ahead.
What inspired you and Rick to collaborate with each other?
Rick, so Rick felt like he was very hesitant to write a book from the perspective of a gay character being straight. So he literally asked his editor, like, do you know someone I could work with who is queer, who has written books about queer people, who might be able to help me? And that's how we initially met and got connected with each other. So it was very much this place of like, I just want to do Nico and Will right and do a story that feels right for them. So, okay, let me do yours. What's your name? Wait, by the way.
Nico's sister. In the first reading, what inspired you to add that Nico's sister was a worshiper of Artemis, or like,
Oh, sorry, Thomas.
or like what inspired you to add like
Oh,
Artemis?
Actually, okay, that's a really funny one, which is, all in the original outline, all it said was that Nico has a bunch of weird dreams and then wakes up and talks with Will and Mr. D. That's all it said. So when I had to audition for the book, that's all I had to go on. So I was like, hey, what do you mean by this? And Rick was like, make it up. And I was like, oh, no. And he's like, well, that's why I'm asking you to audition. Can you come up with original things to add into the book? So actually, most of the dream sequence is me attempting to show off to Rick and be like, look, I know what canon is. And not only do I know the canon really well, I'm going to make the canon all warped and wrong. So like a lot of the stuff that happens is not true. That's not how it really happened. And so what I wanted it to be is also a fake out of like you, because there's the mystery of who sent the prophecy, and then also who, like who's actually behind everything. And so since I knew who was actually responsible for it, there's like a whole psychological element of like, how can Nyx trick Nico into coming and doing her bidding so she can trap him or whatever. So I was like, of course, because also, demigod, I forgot the word demigod. I was like, demigods also have the weirdest dreams. So I was like, let me do dream logic, make it extremely bizarre, but also what can happen in a dream that'll absolutely make Nico be like, yeah, I have to go to Tartarus. And I was like, okay, let me just dig deep, hear all these weird things, make references to his sister, to Jason, all of these things, and I'm like, oh, he won't be able to resist. What color? Is it Thomas?
How long did it take you?
Okay. Well, let me spell your name correctly before I. Because one time I was talking while writing a book, or like signing a book, and I wrote the word I was saying. So it said like, I think their name was like Rachel, and I wrote to whatever, or something, because I said the word whatever, and she was like, my name's Rachel, and I was like, oh, sorry. So I bought her another book to make up for it. Anyway, what was your question?
How long did it take you?
The first draft took me 35 days. By the way, this is my full-time job. I don't do anything else. So it was 35 days of writing like 10 hours a day. I would say the whole process from the beginning of the first draft to Rick and I going back and forth, it took us a year. Because we each did 3 drafts. So probably a year back and forth. Any other questions? Thoughts? Yes. I'm so glad you could stay here the whole time. I thought you were going to leave early.
Oh yeah, I was thinking.
You're like, maybe how about we sit down?
I'll ask a question and then
Okay.
So the journey takes place in the fall. It's like Persephone
Yes.
down there, and then they come back and say it's still fall, but it was originally the start of it. Like the book started at like the end of the summer, where like all the kids were going back home.
Yes.
So like, wouldn't that be September?
It is in.
But like Persephone's down there. She's only down there during the winter.
That's
How
probably
long are they down there?
That's probably my fault because I was like, I think for me. So okay, it's so interesting because we had this conversation too. So, Rick's thinking on it, and my sort of like, so there's kind of a hint to an explanation for that in the scene with Will and Persephone, which is that she's actually not supposed to be there, but she showed up specifically to talk to Will. So there's a little line that I cannot remember which one of us wrote that's supposed to hint towards that, but that's basically, she's actually not there full time. She only came down there specifically, like Hades was like, yo, come down to, because Hades set the whole thing up, right? Hades was the prophecy. So she is not actually down there full time. She only showed up just for Will.
Before you go, so 2 people came in, can we take one more?
Oh, yeah.
I can't, I've been sending Miss Abel some stuff, but I'm gonna tell you guys that you guys did a great job. You should be really proud of
Questions
me.
were amazing. I'm so excited.
The whole side of the
There you go. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Good job.
Thank you guys. I really love answering your questions.
I have one more question.
Okay, ready?
Fifth man where like Nix is like, attack them and Tiffo is like, nah, I'm gonna sleep.
Okay, no, I'm so glad you asked this, because I never get to talk about this stuff, because most people I talk to haven't finished the book. So, like, the visits I've done this week with other students, they've only gotten, like, halfway through. So there's, like, half the book I can't even talk about. Okay, part of that came from a big conversation Rick and I had about we really wanted this book to show you that monsters are starting to figure out that they have other options. So a lot of it is, you see that with Menoides, you see that with Garyon, what's that?
Tyson too?
Yes, like this idea that they have spent their entire existence being like, you're bad, you just are trying to fight demigods and people and be evil. And throughout the series, he's been just very gradually being like, wait, monsters are starting to figure out. So one of the big ones initially was Bob. Like Bob's huge turn in House of Hades was like the first sign of like, monsters are starting to figure out they have other options. So this is the book where, especially because it's a book about like, who you are on the surface is not who you are in your heart all the time, is saying, hey, what if other monsters start figuring out, and other gods and whatnot, that they do have choices. So it's hinted pretty early on that Nyx is not exactly great to a lot of these, like Epialis, to Hypnos and whatnot, like doesn't treat them very well. And so I love getting to write that, especially because one of the gods who's involved in all of this is Nemesis. And Nemesis's whole thing is not just revenge. Everyone thinks they're a god just for revenge, but they're a god for balance. And that was when Nemesis and the other gods are realizing, hey, this is unbalanced and this isn't fair at all. And so I just love this moment of you're expecting this huge battle and everyone who's supposed to do it is like, peace, I'm out. Like, no thanks. So yeah, it was just a chance to do something
And
different.
Nix is like, what?
Yeah, I loved it too because that was something that surprised me in the original outline too, because I'm just so used to like monsters do one thing, and then at the end of this book you expect this huge moment and the opposite happens, and I was like, oh, I love this. I love stories like this where you think it's going to go one way and it doesn't, and so that's a lot of where that came from. Okay, last question, because then I got to go to the airport, like immediately to the airport. But yes, go ahead.
Oh, what's the question? I was just thinking.
No, go ahead.
My favorite book, I mean not book, my favorite like part of the book was like it's pretty early on, but I forgot how to pronounce the name. I just think
Oh,
They put like their favorite parts of the stuff.
person.
That's what motivated that chapter.
you did. I don't my pot.
And then they go.
Oh, Rosha, Epialis, yeah. I'm pretty sure that's Rick's joke, actually. That's not me. I do know that. That is Rick's joke, and I really like it. He's like, close shot. Well, even then, like, just the way that they talk, like, Nico talks to. That was fun, too, of, like, getting them to talk differently to, like, gods and monsters than we were sort of used to. It was really funny. Like, I love that they're like, oh, your dreams are really good. And Epialis is like, oh, thank you so much. Like, that was really fun, so.
It's because it was like, I'm gonna kill you right now with this giant sword. And
Yeah.
like, hey, you have really nice dreams. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, but even then, the flip side of that is actually the Eterne scene, where they're like, hey, we don't actually want to kill you. And then the two monsters are like, please kill us. And Nico and Will are like, what is happening? What do you mean, please kill us? And they're like, do it right now. And they're like, no, I don't want to. Can we just go by? They're like, no, kill us, kill us, kill. Like, that's, like, writing that scene, I was like, I feel, it was, oh God, I love, that is genuinely probably my favorite scene I've ever written in any book, was writing Carl and Bart.
L-A-K-S-H-M.
It's L-A-K or L-A-A?
It's L-A-K.
Lakshmi.
Look, L-A-K-S-H-M-I.
Just wanted to make sure.
I'm not gonna crinkle the paper if you look at it. I'm gonna get it right on the wall.
Of course.
Amazing. Who's friends with Lakshmi? Can you get this?
Oh wait, I think I left my thing in Mr. Tesla's room.
Yeah, okay. We'll have to get yours out. What time is it?
It is.
Thank you girls for coming and taking the time to record.